Welcome to the January 11th, 2017 edition of the Common Sense television show, broadcasting at Utica, Rome, public access cable TV channel 99 on Mondays, 6 p.m., Tuesdays, 8 and 9:30 p.m., Wednesdays at 5, Thursdays, 8:30 p.m., and Sunday mornings at 8. I'm Frank Vasari, your host, and today we have two guests that have been with us before. But we have them here today because of a very timely set of circumstances that have occurred like a tornado over the last few days. And in the beginning of the program, you saw something very different. In the 20 years that we've been on, we've never started off with a picture before the show, but what you saw was the headline in today's paper. Okay, we don't have it here, but the headline reads about Brindisi, Assemblyman Brindisi, and our county executive, Pacenti, and others involved in a very controversial set of circumstances, which we're going to talk to about with our guest today, Brett Truitt and Jim Brock, co-founders of No Hospital Downtown. Good morning.
Good morning, nice to be with you.
Pleasure to have you back.
Thanks for having us.
I mean, this happened, it was like almost it was fit for TV. This morning in the Utica newspaper, the headline is unbelievable.
Yeah, it is unbelievable, and of course the headline refers to the fact that we have been attempting to get these emails through the government process of FOIL, and they are just starting to trickle in now, if you will, and they are salacious, to say the least. These emails, Frank, show the complete disdain that our elected officials have for the people, the people's voices, even for each other. Where they have shown disdain for our state senator Griffo, even a cavalier discussion about our mayor. It is a very small group that are trying to push this hospital, and we've said that from day one, that this was never a hospital decision, this was a politician's decision.
Well, and I've been making this statement for the last several weeks, if not months, that you meant a small group. I call it a ring of overbearing elected officials and community leaders. I mean, this is a small group who have imposed their will regardless of the consequences, but now it seems that these consequences are going to come to light.
Oh, they sure are.
Because of what has occurred and because of the two work that you fellows have done for the public, for yourselves and the public, to me is just admirable.
You know, with their own words, I'll give you an example. On 9/1, back in 2015, Mr. Brindisi, from his law firm email to Mr. DeMeo and Mr. Pacenti, of course, Steve DeMeo, the head of Edge, and he states, "I know Ray," referring to Ray Meyer, "wants us to be low-key on location, but I don't want public opinion derailing this."
Now, Anthony, Assemblyman Brindisi said this. These are
They
his
do
words.
not want public opinion. Now think about that. He even says in this very same email, Frank, which is troubling, because he touts the fact that he wrote the legislation. He said, "I seem to remember the legislation stating there has to be community input on location." The problem is these emails demonstrate they already determined where they were putting it, downtown, before they even had any community input. So realizing that they were in trouble based on their own legislation, they perpetrated a fraud on the community by then having community forums. You'll remember the early ones about a year and a half ago, when they brought the community together, but it wasn't an issue of where it should be located. They told the public when they arrived, it's going downtown. They merely wanted to discuss the color of the drapes.
And I hate to use another cliche. You know, they made this. They made the decision, and then it's like, you know, rearranging the chairs on the Titanic.
Oh, absolutely.
And they come out with all this faint attempts at saying we were including the public. My take, and I think I've expressed this to both of you before, right from the beginning, this was tainted and this was a sham, because when the Mohawk Valley Health System was given the nod to run, okay, with this program, and when questions early arose, where are your meetings? We'd like to attend, we can't. And they use their bylaws saying that we don't have to let the public in, we don't have to have transparency. It's at that point, I was expecting Assemblyman Brindisi to stand up and say, look, this is a time that you need to suspend those. This is a very urgent thing. This transcends everything else that we've done before, because you're talking about lives, people on operating tables, people that they're gonna be in their hospital beds. And this is something that we should have the public at least be able to hear and not be shut out. So when Assemblyman Brindisi did not stand up, and he's always claims he's a champion for transparency. He's done it for other, well, I've got some articles that I'll try to bring up later on in the show.
It depends on what the definition of transparency is, I guess, right?
Well, what the situation is.
And who it's for.
Right. And what these emails, along this point you're bringing up, what these emails demonstrate is that it never was a hospital decision, it was a
That's what I wanted
politician's
to add.
decision. And therefore, whatever we would have learned in the meetings would have been simple. They told us where to put it, and if we don't put it there, we're pulling the funds. So Mr. Brindisi even goes so far in one of the emails that we have as saying,
Isn't that extortion? When they, and I want to know who says that. When they say, if you're not going, and they've said this many times over and over by different people, if the hospital doesn't go downtown, it's not going anywhere. Isn't that an extortion statement?
Well, there are people
Even blackmail?
People are telling us that we are against the hospital. We're negative. We're not. This isn't.
We're against a red zone site.
We're actually against bulldozing downtown.
We're
For a
against
hospital.
the location.
It's
We're
only
all in
about the
favor
location.
of better health.
We would all like a new hospital. And let's get a lot of other new stuff, but at some point, it all has to be paid for, it all has to make sense. And why are we not telling people that there's 40 businesses, private business owners, that own pieces of land and buildings for generations, and that's being whitewashed?
Yes, and it
Because
is.
that would derail the whole thing, as Jim Brock said earlier today. The hospital downtown would be dead on arrival if we looked at the whole picture. So they're out there characterizing Jim and I and 3,000 people on No Hospital Downtown on Facebook, saying that we're passing around fiction and misinformation. But all we're asking for is all the information and for honesty. So,
And I'd like to ask your viewers to go back and think about the times they've either seen us on your show or heard us on television or read about us. If there's anything that we've ever said in 2.5 years that ultimately hasn't
Hasn't
come true.
right.
Well, and that's the case. I got our guest this morning, our Jim Brock to my right, Brett Truitt to my left. And this thing getting back to the transparency issue right from the beginning. So I think it was flawed, and I think Assemblyman Brindisi missed a golden opportunity. If he really wanted to follow his trek of claims that he's transparent, he should have said, I want to get back to this for just a minute, that he should have said, Mohawk Valley Hospital board members, you need to suspend, that rule in this case and let the public in, because this transcends everything else.
But the reason they didn't let the
When that
public in,
didn't
the
happen-
decision was already made.
Yeah, but I'm just saying, but for me, that was the cutting point right from the beginning.
Sure.
So when that happened for
Certainly
me,
the red flag.
it was the red flag that everything else, if that was flawed, everything else is flawed.
And I think we have to be careful. I think the hospital board has been put in a really tough situation.
See, I don't
Because
buy- no, stop. I don't buy that.
Okay, but let me just finish. If you look at the emails, if you just browse the emails, a whole year's worth of emails, you can see where Mohawk Valley Edge and our elected officials, politicians, are working to place a hospital downtown. And you get the sense that the hospital's like, well, we're broke. We really don't have any money. So let us know what's going on. I think that they were forced to go downtown.
How do you force somebody? Now,
No, but I'm not.
Wait, Brett, excuse me. I'm sorry about this.
I will buy you lunch. Okay?
I don't need lunch.
No, but I'm just saying, I'll buy you lunch. You can't pick. I'm going to tell you where we're going, but I'll pay for lunch. You're probably going to go. But I'm saying, okay, I'll pay some, and then let me pick where we're going to eat. And I'm like, no, I'm going to pay. I'll get the money. You just be there. And the hospital is being played and strung along.
And
they shouldn't have acquiesced. They should have said, wow, this is a new hospital. It's going to be around for 75 years taking care of the community. it's really important, and we're not going to play these games, but they chose to play the games. I guess.
Brett,
And I
Jim,
can
let me
confirm-
let me
Brett,
ask
I
you
can
this
confirm
question.
what Brett's saying.
How many board members, roughly 20 board members?
15 to 20.
15 to 20. And they're touted as the cream of the crop, okay, upstanding citizens.
Correct.
Who have our best interest at heart.
I think
Those-
they made mistakes.
Okay, those 20 people, it was their duty when something happens like this, because, and I shouldn't even make this comparison, I won't, but when you use the thing that I had to do it because I was ordered to do it, I was forced to do it, or I felt ill at ease doing it, then you are not one of the pillars of our society. You are not the person
Right.
that we should be
Right.
looking up to for these decisions. So if you don't have the guts, okay, to check your leadership, okay, when something's coming in and say, no, this is
And then you
not
know it's
right.
wrong, right.
Okay, and they sit by and you give them a buy on that, I can't do that.
But
I'm
Here's
not
some
giving them
credit.
a total buy. I'm saying they were set up. And what I'm telling you is the dessert
For 2.5
table-
years?
No, but the dessert
How
table.
long can you be in the dark?
Well, I
No,
want
no,
to.
no,
I
but
want to
the
give
dessert
3 of them
team-
credit. The reason we formed No Hospital Downtown is because 3 were brave enough, even though they were sworn to silence. 3 of them were brave enough before the announcement was made to go downtown to come to me and tell me what was going on behind the scenes. And I said, "How on earth could you even agree with this?" And they said very clearly. They said, "DeMeo, Brindisi made it clear to us, you put it where we tell you, or we're pulling the funds.
And we have that
And
on
we
tape.
need
It's extortion.
funds."
We have that on
So
tape.
it should have been out, but
It
don't
was
they
something,
tout-
it wasn't anything very good.
Don't they tout though that it was a unanimous decision by the
Yes,
board?
and it was.
Okay.
In
And
fact,
it was.
Okay, so
But
what were
they
these 3
also
members?
unanimously approved the St. Luke's campus as the alternate site if we can show that it is not feasible to go downtown, and these emails.
That was a red
help
herring, that
us
was
do it.
never gonna happen, they just threw that out there for bait.
But,
Um,
so the other thing is, the hospital won't let the public see the search of the sites. So on one hand, we're told it has to be downtown because it has to be in the city of Utica. But at the same time, they're saying we did an extensive search. We analyzed 12 sites, 3 of them fit the requirements, you know, sewage, traffic. But you cannot see that study. So, but they want our money, and they want us to pay for a $43 million parking garage. And they want to bulldoze someone like Joe Serini, who's been down there for 15 years patching together a historic building. And then they have them saying that Brett Truitt and Jim Rock are crazy, or I'm the crazy one.
I'm
It's-
the good looking one.
Yeah.
I mean,
And they're,
But
I
that's,
think
but
so.
again, I gotta go back to the 20 board members again,
Yes.
that was their duty, that was their job, okay, to put the speed bumps in there. They never did it, they still haven't done it, and when that happens, the public doesn't have a chance, because you have no one looking out for their interests.
That's very true, and listen, these emails are going to demonstrate, and we have 2.5 years of them coming in, and so we have 2 lawyers looking at them, we're reading them. As these come in, we're seeing a greater picture of total disdain for the population, for its citizens, for one another in many cases. It's chilling. I have to use the word chilling.
Well, and
And
again,
we call it email gate.
you have, and I think that's appropriate, you have, and I've been to most of these meetings where Mr. Scott Para and, who's the other gentleman?
Schofield,
Mr.
Mr.
Schofield, at meetings, and when you ask them pointed questions, they say, well, it's under study.
Yeah, or too early.
It's
They
too
like to
early,
say too
we're
early.
working on it, all these little,
can I?
Yeah.
can
okay,
I-
let
can
me
I-
just finish, okay? When you ask them though about why not at St. Luke's, oh, because we got this, you can't do it because of that, and this and that, they got everything handed down for them why you can't do it. But the reasons to put it where they want to when they ask you questions,
You can't talk about
we've been
that.
working on it for 2.5 years, they never come to a conclusion.
What's scary is they determined it to go down there before they can answer critical questions. For your viewers, think about this. We know they're taking the police maintenance facility. Nowhere have they outlined who's paying for it, who's going to demolish it, and where the police maintenance facility is going to go. Yesterday, we were told that the police chief confirmed that, in fact, they're going to take the station, and we knew that. They've disseminated footprints that show they're taking
Can I add
the station and the
quick?
court.
We're gonna take a break. and
Well,
then
real quick, let me just say, in today's newspaper, they're refuting that and saying, no, we're not taking it.
Right,
And
because
the
once they get caught with their hand in the
They
cookie
retract.
jar,
Right.
they
No,
retract.
but what they do is the hospital is saying, we are not taking it. That doesn't mean another piece of the
Entity
project
is not
going
taking-
to take it.
Right.
We'll be back with our two guests, Jim Brock and Brett Truitt, in just moments. Thank you for staying tuned to the January 11th, 2018. I said that before. This is the 2018 edition of the Common Sense Television Show. And our guests today are Brett Truitt and Jim Brock. If anyone that would like to be a guest, to suggest a guest, or make a comment, please call 315-724-8884 or email us at commonsense, and that's CENTS, commonsensenewyork@gmail.com. Well, again, let's get back to the article again today, and some of the things that
We want to specifically have Brett read a quote from Mr. Brindisi about threatening to pull the funds and support. Go ahead,
Okay,
Brett. This is critical.
Assemblymember Brindisi, to whom and what's the date?
This would have been to DeMeo and Vicente et al.
And the
Go
date,
ahead.
roughly?
I believe it's definitely 2015, perhaps September.
It was September.
A couple of years
September.
ago,
So
anyway.
September 2015, there's emails that we've obtained, and in one of the emails, Brindisi is quoted saying, "I feel like walking away from this whole thing and telling the community and the hospital, if you don't want this thing downtown, then good luck on St. Luke's, and don't count on me for 1 ounce of state support."
Wow.
So that is certainly a smoking gun, because as you'll recall, early on, they called both of us liars when we said, Brindisi and DeMeo said, if you don't put it where we tell you, we're pulling the funds. That confirms it. That's a huge smoking gun.
I don't know how does an assembly person get out of that? How do they wiggle out of it?
He will not get out of it. As we saw yesterday when he was being interviewed, he's caught, and these are only going to get worse.
Let's talk about some more quotes. What other quotes do you have that would be
Well, Jim,
interesting?
I think has one.
Here's a very troubling one, where he describes people.
Now he is being
This
Assemblyman?
Steve DeMeo.
this would be Mr. DeMeo
To-
and Mr.
To
No,
Vicente and
yes, Mr. DeMeo to Pacenti and Brindisi. Now think about the people that he's talking about here. He said, first of all, he starts out saying that the notion of this area being ripe for redevelopment is laughable. He's referring to the Columbia Lafayette Street neighborhood. It is largely a tear-down, start-over area, he says. He goes on to say, the Bag Square people, Brent, but he meant to say Brett, Michelle Truitt, Beth Irons, needs to get their heads out of their asses. I'm reading
this
right
is
from his email.
Assemblyman Brindisi.
No, this
Oh,
is DeMeo too.
Steve DeMeo.
Listen to the disdain they have for people. Get their heads out of their asses. To refer to leaders like Michelle Truitt, Beth Irons, Brett Truitt, who've done so much for the revitalization of our downtown, and say that they have their heads up their asses because maybe they're concerned about issues that still to this very day haven't been answered.
And he's actually wrong, because that area is ripe for development. And actually, there are 3 buildings in a row on one block that they hold out, and they call it crushing blight and the neighborhood functionally obsolete in the MV 500. So they've created this narrative that there's few or several businesses, it's crushing blight, and it's functionally obsolete. But if you see what Jim and I see, and as we've made people aware, there are 41 plus businesses in the Columbia Lafayette neighborhood. It's historic. Way back, we've had that documented by landmarks.
And the landmarks, that's right.
It's
As
totally
council,
clear.
they've come on board
It's
since
totally-
we were with you last.
Landmarks took a measured approach. They said, we're not political, we're looking out for old buildings. Let's wait and see. So they waited and saw. They met with the hospital architects. They had great conversations. They explained all the historical items, and the architects come out and say, well, it's really a mixed bag. You have buildings from different periods, and well, and they kind of dismissed it verbally, and then they stopped inviting landmarks to the meetings. It went on and on and on, the rendering came out and shows us a suburban hospital, parking lots
Galore.
for hundreds of yards, a big parking garage, and a box of a hospital that could save our life. It can do all that right at St. Luke's, but they're saying, oh no. And they're changing their story. They used to say the wetlands were a problem. Mr. Brindisi sent a letter to us through email on our petition page, and he didn't mention wetlands. That was the #1 cause of not going to St. Luke's before.
Well, the excuse, you mean.
The
Yeah, the
excuse.
excuse.
So,
And by the way, there are maybe a maximum of the 64
It's
acres
not
there,
wetlands.
maybe the maximum of 5 or 6 acres that we can determine might even be, if we want to grant them a little bit of wetlands on the property, but that is a very small amount in relation
can I
to
add
the
though?
total property.
You can actually create wetlands.
Oh, sure you can.
You basically create a big parking lot or 4 or 5 of them. The drainage goes off
Yes.
the parking lot. It goes into ditches, and guess what happens? You have cattails and marsh
And
grass.
turn it into an asset,
And you-
because it gives you a
Yes,
little bit of
right.
the,
But
a little depth, a little perception of the
Right,
property.
and did some ducks fly in and land? That's great. But you can keep that, recreate it, you can put it 2 acres away or 2 miles away. They did it for nanotech. Steve DeMio pats himself on the back that he allowed nanotech to get to Marcy because he
spite
mitigated,
of-
he
mitigated the wetlands.
mitigated.
In
It's
spite of
done
the-
all
But
the
it
time.
has been just a red herring because it's not true. It's such a small part of the property anyway, and as Brett described, some of those wetlands were created by their own parking lots.
But if you did it for the nano site, why can't you do it for
You
the?
can.
Oh,
They
you
don't
can.
want to.
You can.
Right, there's not the will. So let's get back to this, today's headline. Brindisi, Pacenti defend 2015 email about hospital, and big, right in the beginning, the quote is, and this was written by Amy Neff Roth from the OD.
Yes, Amy
Quote.
Roth.
She says, the quote is, from Assemblyman Brindisi, "I don't want public opinion derailing this," Assemblyman Anthony Brindisi wrote in an email about the planned downtown hospital back in 2015. Now, I've heard Assemblyman Brindisi over the years, over and over and over again, claim that he is a champion of transparency and that he always wants the public included and he'll do everything he can. This totally in writing, but basically blows that out of the water.
Can I take his
correct?
role?
Yeah, Brett,
So
yes.
if he was sitting here right now, what he would say is, no, you misunderstood. I just want to defend against hashtag no hospital downtown. That's what I'm talking about. That's the public. I actually want to talk to the public. But that's when you hire the PR firm to talk to the public about a downtown hospital.
Not ask the public, but
Correct.
tell the
They're-
public.
Tell the public. So he is saying, no, you're mischaracterizing my words. It's like, no, you wrote that. You said you want to prevent public opinion from derailing. We are the public opinion. We've done an awesome job. We have caught people's imaginations. We've caught the attention of property owners. We caught the attention of people who actually love what's going on in downtown Utica. And we've done it so effectively, they try to diminish Jim and I.
But you have to keep in mind, okay, don't forget, Assemblyman Brindisi is a lawyer. He knows words, he knows how to use them, how to manipulate
Right,
them.
well, I'm
He,
just-
he doesn't use them very
And how
well.
to stack them. Okay, it would have been better said using your logic.
No, that wasn't my logic. What I'm telling you is that's
That's what
logic.
he's trying
It
to
would have been
explain.
better said, I do not want
No hospital.
no hospital downtown derailing this.
Right.
Correct.
Right, but what he really meant was, he understood that if the public had a clear view, if they knew on day one what we know
The
today,
common sense public.
the common sense public knew then, the day that was announced, with the fraudulent map footprint in the OD of only 12.5 acres, if we knew all the facts today of how many businesses would be lost, businesses that do such great work, like the Compassion Coalition and the Bargain Grocer
Salvation
and
Army.
the Salvation Army, those that help the less fortunate in our community, and businesses and industry that are in there, it's a living, breathing neighborhood. If they had come forward and been truthful, on day one, this would have been dead on arrival. If they had said to the community, we're also taking your maintenance facility for the police station that has not been paid for, we're taking your police station, we're taking your courts. If they had laid it all out on day one, this would have been DOA, dead on arrival. So there's never been transparency. It's been drip, drip, drip of information. And then they waited till Christmas. Think about this, Frank. They waited till this Christmas to send those letters to those property owners, threatening eminent domain, offering them pennies on the dollar for what their properties are worth, and demanding that within 15 days they answer it, or they will pull them into court and steal their properties through eminent domain.
And where's that going?
There's a couple days left, right?
There's 3 days left before they have to respond. I can tell you that the property owners that we've spoken to and others not only have not signed it, they've already spoken to council. They're coming together to find a way to fight it. This is the most criminal act of stealing property from a private property owner, using a public entity. We've been told Pacenti will use one of his arms of the county to then steal this through eminent domain, and then turn around and give it to a private tax-exempt entity. A private tax-exempt entity. Some of your viewers may not even realize hospitals don't pay taxes. We're going to wipe out all these tax-paying businesses and businesses that do so much for the poor and less fortunate, to put a tax-exempt parking lot with a box in the middle of it. And when you drive into Utica from the west coming to the east, you're going to hit this mess. It'll be like driving into Rome and hitting that fort and saying, my gosh, which way do I go?
Exactly.
The other thing is they're taking city property. The mayor came, this is another thing that upset me early on, is the mayor said, yes, we're willing to work with the hospital to close streets and offer property. So I think his job is to represent the people. And this was very early on when he says this. I get offended because I would like to, you want to care about your community, right? You want people to take ownership, to do good things. But if the mayor sees it a different way, he can give away property. If there's a vacant lot down there, which there are a couple, instead of giving them away to a nonprofit, Jim will tell you, he can describe it better than I, what's happening around the Aud. With Varick Street, Bag Square, downtown, the auditorium, there's a new Stewart's on State Street, you've got
This
the
whole
art
neighborhood's
district.
coming alive.
It's the center. And now you're taking this piece of land where you could build a condo, a business, whatever, and actually tax.
See, I look at it this way. You have a number of people making these knee-jerk reactions.
Yep.
Not because they know what they're doing, but they're being told what to do.
Exactly.
So now, and because if you look at yesterday, the day before, either yesterday or to the day before's paper, the mayor came out with the city of Utica and said that it's doubtful we may be able to stay under the 2% cap this time because it's unreasonable.
They're broke.
If we're broke now, okay,
And now
why
we're going
would
to build a parking garage?
And don't forget, Forbes claimed, and their study did, that Utica was the third worst city last year, financially and every other way.
Absolutely.
So with all of these facts, and you have this ring of elected officials and community leaders still going forward with this, I mean, they're taking us over the cliff.
They are taking us over the cliff, but you know what? These emails will stop us from going over the cliff. I firmly believe it. Speaking about the mayor doesn't have the authority to close streets or give properties away. That is the auspices of the council. And I'll go one step further. We talked about disdain for even each other in these emails. At one point, we're reading some of the emails, and they pose this question. You think somebody maybe should talk to the mayor? Right. This is Brindisi, DeMayo, Pacenti.
Has anyone talked to the mayor?
Anybody talked to the mayor yet? I mean, this is the disdain they have shown in these emails for our mayor.
But I mean, the disdain is such an unprofessional thing to say.
Yeah, hey, I mean, we're going to force it down in the city. We're going to take all these properties off the tax rolls. We're going to destroy people's lives, homes, and businesses. Hey, anybody talk to the mayor? How does the mayor feel about that?
You know,
I like Rob. I'd be pretty offended, Rob, if I knew they're referring to me in emails like
it's like at a picnic, you have, did anybody bring the Coke?
Yeah. Hey, anybody?
The soda? Anybody bring the soda?
Anybody remember to invite Uncle Charlie, the crazy uncle? Well, Uncle Rob, you weren't part of this planning, and we know that.
We have to take another break, and we will be back with our guests, Brett Truitt and Jim Brock, in just a few moments. We're back. Thank you for staying tuned to the January 11th, 2018 edition of the Common Sense Television Show. Our guests are Brett Truitt and Jim Brock, co-founders of No Hospital Downtown. Brett?
Yeah, I just want to point out that one of the themes that's been in the news is that this is a done deal. The hospital's going downtown. There's no conversation. The fact is, the hospital owns no land downtown currently. They don't own any land. The hospital doesn't have the $300 million. They've been awarded it, but it's just an award. The money is still $300 million of taxpayer debt, New York State taxpayer debt, that the state will go bond for, and eventually, when construction starts, they would release the money. They can do that at St. Luke's. It does. It's the greatest population center of Oneida County.
Now, you made the
It's St.
statement.
Luke's.
You made the statement that the Mohawk Valley Health System does not own the property downtown, but they do own St. Luke's, and that raises so many
Okay,
questions.
but
in
I just
people's
want to let the
No,
people,
right.
you need to understand, it's not a done deal. It's not a done deal.
Right.
It's not a done deal
Far
because
from it.
they have no land. They don't have the $300 million.
They haven't completed seeker.
And the seeker, and that's for where you have to do. You're required to do an environmental impact study. It looks at everything, and one of the biggest things is historical elements. And one of the first questions that is asked in this study, seeker study, was there an alternative location? Oh wait, there is an alternative location.
And unanimously approved by the board,
Right.
St. Luke's.
So here we are saying that the hospital did an extensive survey search. You can't see it. It's a done deal. It's going downtown, and the hospital decided it. And we have sought public input.
Well, this is the thing. The average person doesn't understand the basic logic. If you're going to build a house, if a person was going to build a house, and somebody said, "I want to give you $300,000 to build a house,"
Right.
okay,
Thank
all
you.
you have to do is build it in Utica, okay?
Okay.
So you say, "Okay, well, that's my relatives down in Albany gave me $300,000 to spend here in Utica." So I have a friend up in right across the line at St. Luke's Hospital, and I also have one at the old Psych Center. They both own, it's free land. They'll give me the land for free to do this.
Right.
Any logical person will say, plus 12.5 acres, that I know that was the one that was advertised. Should I go put it and knock down buildings and use some of that $300 million, or waste it, that $300 million to build it in a place where I have to knock down buildings?
That's my house. You can't do that.
Or
No.
should I go to my Uncle Joe is going to give me the free land up at the St. Luke's site, or my Uncle Aunt Sadie who's going to give me the one free land over at the Psych Center?
Well, this is why we've advocated.
And 100 acres versus what,
Right.
35?
The
64
64 acres
60.
at St. Luke's versus
100 acres.
34 acres downtown.
And
Now-
how many at the?
It's about 100 acres.
At the
old
psych
At the
center.
psych, okay.
Center. But here's the interesting point. We advocate for healthcare because we want the full 300 million going to that free land. On that free land, you can use every dollar for healthcare.
And not waste it.
And not waste a dollar stealing properties, paying a high-priced PR firm to put lipstick on a pig. This cannot go forward. And I have to tell you, what I did when this process started, when they announced they were hiring the PR firm, I bought a lot of stock in lipstick, and I have to tell you, I've made a fortune, Frank. They have spent more on lipstick to put this on this pig than I have ever seen in
And
my
I think the
life.
stock's going up.
Now you're getting stock tips here at Common Sense.
Stock
at
tips,
first, at
you've
first.
got to. Listen, I'm telling you,
Revlon,
Revlon.
L'Oreal, and yeah.
Okay, I want to get on something else that struck my interest. Back in October of 2017, Our View, and that's the editorial that is headed by Dave Dudayak at the OD. He is the editor for the editorial section of the paper, and in it shows railroad cars, and it says, and this is Our View: Cuomo must act to protect his father's legacy. That's the headline. Then it goes down and it starts, and it says, it is the height of hypocrisy that the State Department of Environmental Conservation and Adirondack Park Agency would impose all sorts of rules and regulations to protect the Adirondacks, yet sit back and twiddle their thumbs while a Chicago-based rail company turns part of the precious wilderness into a dump. Now they're talking about people that are about our neighbors 90 miles to the east of us, okay? And it seems the outrage here of Mr. Didayak is, he says it's the height of hypocrisy. And he shows very vivid concern for our neighbors downstate, or to our east, rightly so. But then, on November, less than a month later, on November 19th, 2017, our review, it says, downtown hospital, good medicine for our region. I mean, okay, let me read this. Mohawk Valley, quote, Mohawk Valley Health System, took a giant step this week when it publicly rolled out a site plan for its new hospital along Lafayette, Columbia, Cornelia, and State Streets in downtown Utica. It forgot to put in there that that's the red zone. Okay, that's where the toxic red zone is determined and labeled by the United States Department of Transportation. Further,
It's also a floodplain.
the new facility will revolutionize healthcare in the region. There are still many questions, and you'll have an opportunity to ask them for 2 public forums scheduled December 7th. To me, these two things, I mean, talk about flip-flop, or it's maybe not a flip-flop, it's just 2 polarized views. Okay, here, Mr. Didayak shows intense concern for our neighbors down in the east of us, because railroad cars with those toxic waste are being parked there, only parked there. But to put a hospital and 400 of our residents in beds, trapped in beds and trapped on the operating table, and put the hospital inside the evacuation zone that's there supposedly to help them, because of a threat like this, it just befuddles the brain. I couldn't reconcile. How can anybody spin out of this?
Well, I'll tell you what's interesting, and I'm glad you brought that up. We had spoken with Chief Brooks, and I asked him point blank, I said, Chief, before they chose the downtown site, did they come to you as police chief and request a study, as fire chief, and request a study? He said no, and he said a study was never completed. And of course, our first responders, our fire chief, our police chief, and others were never asked about how it would impact a situation like you're describing, a derailment of toxic waste, and toxic waste travels up and down those rails all year long. They were never asked, how would we evacuate that area, how far would it be? So we did some independent studies, we had EMTs and others provide information, and that is clearly within what you referred to as the red zone, which would have to be evacuated if we had a spill. And then, of course, we all remember less than a year and a half ago, we had a crash of a railroad car, thank God it wasn't toxic, that went right into Union Station.
So one of the points I'd like to make is that when we bring up, there's been people that came to us and said, hey, the hospital located there will be within 1,500 feet of the CSX railroad tracks. And you can go down there today, grab a sandwich and watch the tracks, and you will see a train go by with 100 cars, and there are these big black tanks. And they have toxic chemicals and oils going by. People will say, oh, but the Aud is down there, and the train station, and so many businesses. The hospital's, it's a low risk, but it's still a risk. It's a real risk. No, but time out.
You're gonna risk 400 people.
No, I know. I'm not saying.
And who's ever injured in the spill will have no place to go.
But what I'm saying is the opposition that wants the hospital down there says, Jim, Frank, Brett, it's a small risk. It's not likely to happen. Well, what if we took bets 2 years ago if there would be a train accident at Union Station? Who would have said, I'll take that bet, it's never going to happen? And we had one. And then people say, Brett, when was there ever a train accident in downtown Utica? Or anywhere
just a year and a half
along a mile?
ago.
Well, we had one. And that's why they're called accidents. It does happen. And it is a routine subject in the news. There was just one in Washington. A brand new train track system was opened up. people died.
State of Washington, on
Right.
its initial run.
Right. So these things happen.
These things
it
do
could
happen.
and if it was to happen,
And why even put it near? Why even
that's the
take the
point.
chance?
Well,
And then we look to last summer when we had the floods, and we know that that hospital is also in a flood zone because the Erie Canal flows underneath it. Then we look to last winter. Last winter we had the blizzards. The mayor took the plows of the city off the streets. EMTs told us that thank God that the hospital wasn't downtown last winter because at no time were they unable to get to St. Luke's. They couldn't get downtown to pick somebody up, but they could get to St. Luke's to bring people there. So we
Can I
have
add
so
another-
many reasons it shouldn't go downtown. As
What-
well as 5 p.m., traffic leaving downtown, traffic arriving at the odd 4,000 people or 6,000 for a concert, 4,000 for the Comets. All the staff of this hospital, if it's built there, leaving. All these people arriving, and you have a loved one sick in the hospital and you want to visit them, or even worse, they're in an ambulance trying to get there. And we've now reduced the access to this hospital to a mere 2 or 3 streets.
And don't forget, this hospital, supposedly we have all the highest tech operating rooms, all the state-of-the-art components that were supposed to be there, and you can't use them.
Right.
And you can't even use them.
You can't use them if you can't get to it. And our point is, let's use the whole 300 million to build those state-of-the-art operating rooms at St. Luke's.
Our guests are Brett Truitt and Jim Brock, co-founders of No Hospital Downtown. And we, see, I take this to another little bit of another approach. I think when you make the remark that people say, well, what are the chances it's going to be low? When a person says that to me, would say something like that to me, I think that's a contemptible thing to say. Okay, you're going to make an arrogant statement like that. What are the chances? Okay, you're talking about my family, my kids, my loved ones, and you're going to say, well, let's roll the dice, let's play Russian roulette. I think that's a contemptible statement for anyone to make.
well, if they're making it, we'll post a
The
comment.
politicians.
We'll post a comment on Facebook or somewhere out on the web,
Or Twitter.
or we'll be in a conversation, and they'll say, "Well, that's just crazy. Well, that's not going to happen."
Why would you answer back? That's contemptible. That could happen, and it has
But I
happened.
was-
Complete disdain
But what I was-
for the public.
but what
Well,
I'm
you
saying-
use disdain, I'll use contempt, because
And
I think it is
I
contempt.
like them both.
And I just
You're-
want to.
you're right.
I just want to say that it could happen.
And it has
And
happened.
if I'm a private business person, I can buy a building, I could build it odd, wherever I want. But this is a community hospital. And when you're citing a hospital, you look at the risks, the safety factors, and the hospital is better at St. Luke's. People say, but the roads are right there, the crossroads are right there. It's like, if the crossroads are there and they're made to be bigger and better, it's because that's where the traffic is, right? So if you are 1.7 miles away, which is not far, you can go to St. Luke's where there's less traffic. There's less trouble getting into the hospital. There's 7 different ways to drive a vehicle into St. Luke's. We've mapped it out.
Right.
There are 2 major entrances. There are actually a total of 7. So they said, oh no, you can't build at St. Luke's because the Boilermaker.
Well,
That's
we've had
what
the Boilermaker for 30 years and never had a problem
And that's what
getting
they're
to the
coming.
hospital.
They keep trying to build up why it can't be at St. Luke's.
And it's all red herrings.
It's-
I want to point another thing out. This past weekend, your viewers will remember seeing on the cover of the OD a beautiful brick hospital, and
Elmhurst.
it's just unbelievable. They don't come out and say, now this hospital we're showing you, beautiful brick facade, is not in Chicago. It's 18 miles from downtown Chicago. It's in the suburbs. It's a suburban hospital. It has a huge campus around it. It's next to a park. It's next to a cloverleaf intersection of a highway.
A church.
A church.
A high school.
A high school. And it's in the suburbs. But they don't tell you that. They also don't tell you that the architects that we've spoken to, MVHS's own architects, have indicated that it would be cost prohibitive to build the new hospital downtown with a brick facade because of the costs. So they show a brick facade so you can romanticize about, look what it'll look like, in the middle of all those parking lots. Well, it's not going to look like that at all. And then they use a suburban one.
That's surrounded by surface parking.
And I had to call the OD out the other day on it. I said, look, guys, you can't use a picture like that because a picture's worth 1,000 words. If you're going to use one, tell about the picture you're using. Tell where it's located. You know what the OD's response to me was? Well, we were talking more about inside, what it could contain inside.
Well, then why did they show a picture of the inside?
Yeah, then why are you showing?
They actually did.
Well, this goes back to my point again. Okay,
They're
about the
building
two.
up this narrative.
You know, you got David Dyke's headline: Como must act to protect his father's legacy. Talking about, rightly so, protecting folks our friends 90 miles to the east of us, and calling it an outrage that they would allow trains with toxic chemicals to park there.
Merely park, right?
But then 3 weeks later, they come out. David Dyke's headline comes out and says, "Downtown hospital, good medicine for a region," and putting it inside the
The
red
other
zone.
point, going
I
back
don't
to
get it.
what Jim was saying about this hospital example, we were told that a hospital in downtown Utica would be great for foot traffic. They would go to hospital and
foot
go to the
traffic.
bakery. The hospital they showed us in Elmhurst, it has a Starbucks and a Walgreens integrated into the
Into their
campus.
property campus.
So if you're there to visit the hospital,
You stop at
patients or
Starbucks,
family-
you get your
I
coffee.
didn't. I was just in New York City with my mom at a hospital, #1 hospital. Inside is a Starbucks. They also have another cafe. You don't have to go outside.
So the Starbucks in there trumps everything else. Okay,
Yeah.
it knocks everything else
Oh,
out.
And by the way,
So you get a double, triple latte with.
Right.
Oh,
And by the
oh.
way, Frank, stay tuned because there is Starbucks planned for this new hospital. And for those of us small business owners like Frank Elias, who've done an amazing job developing a fantastic brand of coffee locally that employs a lot of people, they're gonna hurt him dramatically when they make this the center of
They're not going
Starbucks
to.
downtown.
We're
And
stopping
they're not
this.
going to because it's not going there.
Yeah.
They're gonna have to drive to St. Luke's to get their Starbucks.
Okay, we just have a few minutes left. Any other topics?
I would just say, I would ask the listeners, when you go to a town or a city or plan a vacation, how many times have you gone to the hospital campus?
For a cup of coffee.
Well, just to see what's happening.
Do you ever
What's
visit
going
the
on?
campus of
How
the
many
hospital
times have
unless
you-
you're sick?
How many times have you gone to St. Elizabeth's or St. Luke's or Faxton to sit on a park bench and look at the greenery? The picture they put of the rendering in the downtown hospital concept looks like what a dog would see on the sidewalk looking at some trees that are all computer generated to give the people the impression that this
gonna
is
be
gonna-
park-like.
It's going to
It's
be
gonna be-
park.
It's not a tourist destination.
No, and it never will be,
But-
because you're not gonna go there, and you know what? Nothing's more park-like
But they're
than St. Luke's, and I can assure you, no one goes up to sit around St. Luke's because it's in a pretty setting. They go because loved ones are sick, or they're sick, or they work there to take care of those folks. Last thing I'll leave you with, on the 9th month, which would have been September 23rd, 2015, an email from WKTV, Nicole Pitt, to James Genovese, who is, as you know, Casenti's right-hand man. Hey, just wanted to give you a heads up. We spoke with Jim Brock. He opposes the hospital going downtown. I'm sure you've heard. We're planning on using a soundbite from him during Tony's live appearances here. And then they give exactly what I say. And this is the key. It
She
goes
gave a
on-
heads up?
Gave my exact quote. Then it goes on to say, basically, for the first 2 minutes, Don will talk to Tony about what the next step is for the hospital, research, etc. And then he will say, not everyone wants this hospital downtown. Here's what one local business owner had to say. And then they're going to use my quote. And then she goes on to say, and it will then come back to Don and Tony with reaction from Tony. Just didn't want him coming in blind. Now, you've been in media a long
That's
time.
the director of. She's directing it.
Of KTV, she's directing it, she's setting it up.
Who's the reporter?
The reporter was
Okay.
Nicole Pitt.
Is she still there?
I don't know if she's still there, but to give someone that kind of a heads up and set the stage and tell them exactly the timing of the interview and that they'll have a chance to respond and to give them all afternoon
And
to
the
prepare.
Practice. Yeah.
I can assure
Doesn't
you.
that trickle down? Didn't we hear that? Didn't that happen on the national level last year or 2 years ago?
By the way, it gets better. Last night on WKTV, after all of these emails broke, do you know what they covered? Now, UTR covered Emailgate. All the radio stations covered Emailgate. You're covering Emailgate. WKTV chose instead to cover Pacenti, talking about the Oneida Indian Nation putting the casino downtown. Not a mention of Emailgate.
Can I mention something about Mr. Brindisi's comments? He mentions that Jim Rock and myself, and are you a member of No Hospital Downtown? Do you believe in not putting a hospital downtown? No, I just
Of
wonder.
course he's a member.
Okay, I'm saying, okay, so the three of us and almost 3,000 people in our group are spreading fiction and misinformation. And I think that that is unfair. One of the things he'll say is, well, you're asking for things we don't know, and once the hospital has the ability to have architects and engineers, we will get the information out. I would submit to you, as Jim likes to say, you do not need architects and engineers to say there are 40 businesses in this Columbia Lafayette neighborhood. You can go to the mayor if you're talking to him and making him part of this. He should be concerned with people that own property. And he should say, gentlemen, I understand you want to help the governor build up the downtown. I must caution you, there are 40 businesses that you are implicating. Some of them are in little buildings that need a lot of work. Some of them are empty buildings that maybe could be torn down. I believe every building could be fixed. And you don't need to hire high-paid engineers and architects to tell us this.
Yeah, to know that
So
it doesn't
why-
fit there.
So just, if the assemblyman wants to say, well, Brett Truitt is a liar and spreading red flags and working this all up, I would tell you that he is the one spreading fiction or allowing fiction to appear. The OD supports this story with glowing pictures of great hospitals and what can come. But if you have time, if you're not so busy working 3 jobs, getting kids to school, making lunches, if you've had the time that I've had, because I've committed with Jim to stop this, and I believe we will, it doesn't make sense.
And these emails are going to prove it. And I'll leave you with this, Frank. On September 1st, 2015, Mr. Brindisi to Mr. DeMayo and Pacenti were afraid of 300 members of No Hospital Downtown. Today we're approaching 3,000. We're growing leaps and bounds every day.
If you're on Facebook, please join us.
Join us at hashtag No Hospital Downtown. Join the group. If for no other reason, we will keep you informed. We'll be releasing emails. And of course, we'll be back on with Frank on Common Sense to talk about many more emails coming down the road. So stay
And
tuned.
we have to be clear that we've never been against the new hospital,
We've just been against the location.
just the location. And it's really simple.
And as my good friend John Brown, the realtor, would say, when talking about a piece of property, location, location, location. And I submit to you, the proper location is St. Luke's.
Do we have more time?
We do. Just let me add
Go
a couple
ahead.
of things, and I'll give you guys 30 seconds or so for closing thoughts.
Okay.
I think when you listen over the years to Mr. Pera and Mr. Schofield and that ring of elected officials, including Assemblyman Brindisi, you have 3 things happening here. You have when a topic comes out or a question comes out. Okay, first of all, it's almost like a deception mode they go into.
Right.
And then after they get caught, then they deny. And then the third thing is they distract.
Right,
And I
absolutely.
think the distraction talking points that you hear, and we've talked about them earlier in the show. It's well, we're looking at that. It's
Too
coming down the
early to
road.
tell,
Okay, and they become adept at that. But I think the game is over. I think that these emails expose that to a level that I don't think anybody with any credibility can get out of.
It's undeniable.
And by the way, Mr. Brindisi lied yesterday when he said all emails have been given. In fact, we are fighting over emails. An attorney currently is reviewing the ones that they refuse to give us. These are all smoking guns that we have. We can't even imagine how explosive the emails they've refused to give us are.
And one of
So
his
stay
comments
tuned.
was to say, go ahead and release them all. But
That's what he said on the air yesterday.
We don't have them all, and they're
And it's not up to him.
Right.
Because by law, through FOIL, as you're very familiar with, we have a right to those emails. Mr. Brindisi, you don't have a right to tell us we can have yours.
But-
we have a right to them. And for you to tell him that you have released all of your emails, that is factually untrue.
They're holding some information back to this day. The other point is, if you're listening, think about what he says. Go ahead and release them all. That means, hey, release it. I have nothing to hide. I'm not afraid. But we're telling you, if you look at the emails we have, there are things he should be afraid of.
And
And not that he needs to be afraid, but
like the input
Concern.
from citizens.
Concerned. Okay, we want to thank our guests. Okay, Brett Druitt and Jim Brad, co-founders of the hospital downtown. 30 seconds for closing thoughts.
my
Brett
closing
Druitt.
thought, I'm going to concede my time to Jim because I think what he needs to tell you is that although Steve DeMio will tell you that this is an area that needs to just be bulldozed and start over, that's what he does out at the base.
Right.
I'm going to suggest that they haven't been able to attract the companies they want. So what they're doing is they're spending money building roads and knocking things down, which is, I'm not saying it's a bad thing, but that's not what we want to do in downtown Utica. Jim, tell us about what's happening in downtown Utica and where this
I think the
neighborhood
most
is.
Jim
important
Rock?
thing to remember in closing is this is a living, breathing neighborhood. So much vibrancy with groups like Compassion Coalition, the Salvation Army, businesses like Wilcor, the excitement going on at the Odd, the expansion, the Nexus Center coming, what we've seen, the beautiful renovations of the Hotel Utica, what's going on at Brodock Press, what's going on at the Landmark.
Irish
This
Center.
is very exciting. The Irish Center coming in, Varick's coming alive. Ladies and gentlemen, this is the connectivity of our city. We cannot build a wall.
And I think we both, I think the public owes you too a great amount of admiration.
We hope this
for
is
your-
winding down. Thanks,
Well,
Frank.
I don't know if
I
it's
want
winding
my
down,
life
but
back.
it might be in second gear, just when we need to push it
Right?
line.
I want my life back.
And,
Listeners, join the fight, join the battle to save our city.
And basically this boils down to, do we want the hospital in the red zone site, or do we want it at the St. Luke's Utica College site? With
Very
that,
good.
hopefully we'll see everybody next week.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.